Now about this thing, let's go about what Rabbi Cherlow wrote. Okay, uh, someone was asking, isn't he a reformer? I don't believe that many people out there are reformers. The ones who deny Torah Shabbal Peh, like the Rambam, they don't work within the system. Okay, so he talks about the examples he brings are Tzedukim, Baitusim, Karaites. They deny Torah Shabbal Peh and the Talmudic system. As long as someone's working within the Talmudic system, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll call them what they call today Orthodox. Unfortunately, though, and here's the other thing: if you take a lot of political positions, let's say you're a rabbi, you want to be, you're really, you actually committed to the Torah, right? Actually committed to the Torah, a legitimate rabbi. But you take all these leftist political positions publicly. So most people don't understand how rabbinics work. They don't understand how halacha works. If they hear someone who has all leftist orthodoxy for his political positions, for which he states publicly and all the time, and all those political positions are always in consonance with what the reformers are doing, so you can't help it, but people are going to mistake this rabbi for a reformer because all the things he says out loud sound like reform. Or like the joke I like to say, this guy's a leftist, he doesn't eat meat. So anyway, I'm confusing leftism with vegetarianism. No, the answer is that often vegetarianism goes hand in hand with leftism. No, they're associated ideologies. They don't have anything necessarily to do with each other, right? You could be a fully, you could be the most conservative-minded person in the world. You could be the most Haredi guy in the world, and you're a vegetarian. It has nothing to do with your politics. But more often than not, the people who are adopted vegetarian also are involved in leftist politics, right? So too, if you're wondering, if you don't want people to assume you're a reformer, then make sure that if you're really outspoken with regards to politics all the time, you shouldn't take political positions which are always lockstep with those that reformers take, right? Just a piece of advice. So that's why I had to do it. So he wrote this over here. And this is something I found offensive. I'm going to first read what he wrote, and then I'm going to put the sources. We see them on the screen. I understand why we're so offended by it.
Where was this published?
In Slimes of Israel. Slimes of Israel. But the broadest understanding of ethical practice in warfare can likely be gleaned from the teaching in Deuteronomy 23:10. When you go out to war against your enemies, it says machaneh as a camp, an army camp. V'nishmarta mikol davara. He translated and says they should be kept from every evil thing. No, it says, and you shall be on guard from all evil things. V'nishmarta mikol davara. We know all too well that war can lead even civilized societies to perform the most baseless of acts, to eat abominable things, rob, plunder, rape, and pillage. The Jewish ethical approach to war condemns and prohibits such behavior. Okay, that's the first thing you said. The Jewish ethical approach does not allow for the most baseless acts. Okay, our soldiers to become pillagers, eaters of abominable things, rapists, plunderers, pillagers, robbers. I'm going to talk about that soon. He continues, Jewish tradition also makes it very clear that unnecessary spilling of blood is contrary to belief that humanity is a reflection of godliness and therefore demands a level of consideration even when dealing with despicable enemies. Understand what he's saying here. Unnecessary spilling of blood is contrary to belief that humanity is a reflection of godliness and therefore demands a level of consideration. What's he referring to? He's referring to Parshas Noach. No, he thinks it's talking about collateral damage, civilian deaths. Okay? And he continues, acting on the battlefield, Kiddush Hashem, and not lower ourselves to horrific levels of desecration and defilement practiced by our enemies. Okay? Maintain your, whatever, these so-called ethical understandings. I think this is a part of misplaced Barcine. I think he's conflating things. This is convoluted. So where's the conflation start? So it goes over here. Let's talk about V'nishmar Tami Kol Davara. What does the pasuk mean? Let's just scan most basic Chazal sources. V'nishmar Tami Kol Davara. That your camp, the people in the camp, you go out. In an army says Keith Teitzei. All the mitzvahs and devarim are you, stereotypical Jew, who's part of a Jewish army. V'nishmar Tami Kol Davara. What does it say in context? Well, if you look there in the context, by the way, I'm going to tell you that it says that's a klal. Nishmar Tami Kol Davara. And that says if your person's carry, he has to leave the machaneh, and if he has to make toilet, he has to do it far away and make sure that he has a spade to dig with which to dig, and all those other things, and be holy because God is walking in your camp. It says Nishmar Tami Kol Davara. a few examples, and then it says, make sure your camp is holy because God walks within your camp. What do we call that in classical biblical exposition of Chazal? When you give general statement, examples, and then general statement. Oh, klal, fradu, klal. Oh, wow, that's all over the place. It's like in the Ten Commandments. Don't be jealous of anything your neighbor has. Here are examples, and anything your neighbor has. Don't be jealous. Klalu, fratu, klal. And sometimes you have prat, klalu, frat. Whatever it is. This is one of the midas of the Torah, just a basic understanding. It's for drasha, but it's also the way of the Torah to give klal and prat, right? And it's also part of it. It allows for chiastic sections. Here's general statement of the section. Here's the examples, general statement. That's how it closes the section. That's the style of the Torah. And you're going to say that he's saying here, let's look what Nishmar Tamid Kol Devara. The Mishnah says, Al Shalosh Avirot Nashim Mitot Bishat Leidatan. Women, Chas v'Shalom, might die during childbirth. They're being judged. So 3 sins because they were not careful with the mitzvahs given to them. Nida Chala and Halakas Aner. Very interesting. Nida and Chala are mitzvahs deraisa. Hadlakas and is a derabana. Okay. Gemara. Some say it says during Yiladot. Some say it's Yoladot. Women die when they are giving birth, but another version has says Yiladot while they're still young. Okay. So Mandamar Yiladot is talking about when they're young. Tani b'shem Rabbi Yuda Bavona Drim Habani Metim means that they die young. Women die young even before maybe they become mothers. And they're in the Darim. Umay Taima. What's the reason for this? Lashav hiketi et b'nechem. It says Lashav because you were taking oaths and nedarim in vain. So I had to smite your children. Uman damar yoladot mikan. Milan damar yoladot. Those who say it's talking about women during childbirth, we understand mikan she'ena satan mekatreg el b'shat sakana. The Satan is accusing. It means women are basically scrutinized in the divine court when they're giving birth. Okay, it's a time of danger. They're in danger when they're giving birth. It's kind of nerve-wracking. Rabbi Pinchas, Rabbi Yirmiyah, b'shem Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Pinchas says, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, in the name of Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Kesiv. It's written, V'fnei Elazar Kohen Yamod v'sha'alo b'mishpato Urim. Talking about Yeshua should ask Elazar, look in the Urim V'tumim. What should he do? The Seder Urim and Ketiv doesn't say this Seder Urim. It says Mishpat Urim. Mishpat, so there's judgment going on. El Mamij b'shashi Yisrael Yotzim Melachama. Remember, in order to go out to war, you ask the Kohen Gadol, look in the oracle. Should we go to war? So it's called Mishpat because then you're wondering, perhaps it's a time that Israel is being judged. God is weighing their sins and their merits. Okay, and it says, based in Shomar Yoshvelhem im lin tzchum im lin soach im lihinatseach. Okay, based in Shomar is sitting. Do the Jewish people deserve to be victorious or to be defeated? They allow others to beat them. Okay, so time of war is dangerous for us. Our pasuk. When you go out to war, watch out for anything bad. You're telling us that if there's no war, no nishbar tamid kol devara. When do you have to watch out for doing things bad? When you go out to war, implying that no war, no nishbarta. Right? No, that's not the case. This teaches that the Satan's only accusing us during a time of danger. You go out to war, you want to make sure that your heavenly account is clear. You don't have any sins lying around it for which you have to atone. You want to be meritorious. You want to be pious. You want to be a tzaddik. You want to send home the sinners. The person's afraid he's committed sins for which he has not repented, so don't go off to war. We'd rather people who are confident that they deserve God's protection, the people who are doing right and not doing wrong. That's what Nishbar Tamid Kol Devara means, according to the Yerushalmi. And this, by the way, is what Rashi is alluding to. V'chein pirish Rashi al pasuk hainu sheish la'am milchama la'azov adachet liot tzadikim ruim liyeshua. That's basically what Rashi says there. Nishbar Tamid Kol Devara. And the Ramban says something which I think is the starting point for the conflation. Listen to what the Ramban is talking about, and listen to how it's basically, I think, intentionally mistranslated and misapplied by the writer in here. Okay, let's listen to what the Ramban says. Ramban says, "Hanachon b'einai." He first brings Rashi's pshat. He quotes Rashi. Says, "It seems to me, binyan mitzvah azot, this mitzvah nishbar tamid kol devara, ki hakatuv yazhir be'eit asher hachet matsui bo." Okay, the mitzvah is telling us during a time where you're more likely to have hate. You create an army encampment. All these men, young men, have left their families, they left their yeshivas, they left their jobs, and now they're all camping out. So it's going to become like a frat house type of thing. You know, they're not in yeshiva. They're not at home. They're not with their parents. They're not with their families. So there could be a little bit of a breakdown there. It's well known. This is the minhag. Armies go out to war. They eat disgusting things. Well, the rabbi mentioned that, abominable things. They might not keep kosher. Okay? They're going to steal. They're going to take. I need to take. You need to take from somewhere else. Remember, they could take wood. They're going to grab food from townspeople, anybody else. Go raid a village, raid a farm. We're going to take some of their chickens. We're going to eat them. And they're not even afraid of, let's say, niyuf, which is a code word for not just adultery, but other acts of znus. And they're going to eat even non-kosher, nevela. Right? Hayashar b'vnei adam b'tiv'o yitlabesh achzariyut v'chema ketzeit machaneh oyev. A person who's upright among men suddenly is going to have anger, and also he's going to have, I guess, also we mentioned here, cruelty when he goes out against people. It's true. A lot of the soldiers went off to war. They saw what happened. Every day they come out with new atrocities, new footage, new evidence of even worse atrocities than before. Which I don't recommend looking unless you're a soldier and you need this. You need the anger to do something, to fight a Malik. Valkain he's here Ba'akatuv, and therefore the pasuk says, "V'nishmar kami kol davar ra." You should watch out from any davar ra. Val derech hapshat hi azara mikol ne'asar. Here's a pshat. It means watch out for anything that's usher. And in Sifrei it says, "V'nishmar tami kol davar ra shomeani betumos uvitaros of maestros akasav medaber." So about make sure tumos you can't eat. You have to keep the laws of tumatara, and also meiser can't just eat tevel. That's what the pasuk's talking about. Talmud Lamar erva. Eating tumantara and meiser, those are little mitzvahs. Okay, you're not going to get the death penalty for that. Sometimes you have to watch out for erva also. Gila rayos happening, that's bad. Ein liela erva says God shouldn't see ervat davar in your camp. I'm talking about erva. Minali rabos avodas gilulim or avodas kuchavim or avodah zara. Okay, the gila rayos ufshishos damim ukilas hashem. What if they do some really bad ones? The big three and also blasphemy. You have to watch out. If you have an army, make sure that in your camp the people aren't. Well, that in people go to the army, they become sailors in the navy. What's one of the things that characterize, like stereotypical characterization of sailors? They have very foul mouths, right? Yes, and when they dock, they're in port somewhere. Then suddenly all of them go running to prostitutes, right? That's usual what he's talking about type of thing. The sailors come into port, so they do these things. You should not act like that. The Torah encampment should be a place of kedusha. Okay, it should be it's like a Jewish household where they still maintain their high standards of Jewish behavior. That's what he's saying. Okay, Nishmar Tami Kol Devara. That's why Talmud Lomar says Nishmar Tami Kol Devara. Oyachol betumus of taros of maestros akosu medaber. Maybe it's just talking about these trumas of maestros and all that. Talmud Lomar erva ma erva miuchedes ma sesha galu yalav aknanim musalik et ashchina. Erva, it says that's what the Kananim did worse. It's in the Parshas Achremos at the end. Right, the Kananim were doing all these forbidden relations, and for that they got themselves kicked out of the land of Israel, and that also caused the Shechina to leave. Right, if you do it, you're going to lose Shechina, and you're also going to get kicked out. Av kol ma'aseh shegalu alav Kananim musalik et Shechina. Don't do anything that got the Canaanites punished. Avodah zara, shvichus damim, those types of things. Kishomer davar af al lashon hara. And also it says don't even speak lashon hara. Kal v'chomer no nivel peh among the Jewish soldiers. This is also because of what we explained before. Aside from just these warnings, don't commit the severe sins. You have to also add, Jews, of course, aren't allowed to do these things. But when you go out to war, make sure it's especially the Yetzer Hara increases. Right? There's more of a chance to do it. You don't want the divine presence to leave the Jews who are there. They need God in their presence. Kasher Amar, as he said, the Lord your God basically walking, mitalech. We said that was an important word. Mitalech is the way God behaved in the Garden of Eden. Who was hitalech with Hashem? Chanoch, Noach, Avram Avinu, right? He was told to do this. So God himself does this also in our camp. Someone who does these terrible sins in the Jewish camp, they put their detestable things, their sins, usually referring to Gilur Rayos and Shvichus Damim and Avodah Zarah, in the house upon which I called my name, and have contaminated it. It's kind of interesting. Normally, God's place is in the temple, right? That's where the Ark of the Covenant is. When there's a war, and the Jewish people go out to war, and they bring the Ark of the Covenant with them, it's as though the temple's now there. God's presence, as I guess symbolized by the Ark of the Covenant, has left the temple and is now in the middle of the camp. Okay, understand that. The Od shelo yigberu aleinu oivim im naaseh k'maasehem agormim lahem sheyigalu mipanenu. Also, we want to beat these goyim. Why these goyim deserve to lose? Because they're sinners. Sorry about you fighting the Canaanites. If we're just as bad as the Canaanites, we don't have any merit to beat them. If we want to go out against the Philistines, we have to be better than the Philistines. The Rabotenu Arishonim, Al Chayalenu Liot Tzadikim Nisarim Mikol Avira Kashem Nilchamim. Now, this is my own words. According to the Rishonim, okay, the soldiers have to be tzaddikim. They have to watch out from all sorts of errors when they go off to war. Now look what Rav Cherlow is saying. Rav Cherlow wasn't talking about the encampment of the Jewish people. I understand if right now they're massing on the Gaza border, there must be hundreds of thousands of soldiers, right? So they should be eating kosher. They should be davening 3 times a day if they can. They should be learning Torah. They should not be sitting around and gambling. There should not be any mixed gatherings. They shouldn't be just watching their cell phones and their movies. There should be no Gilur Rayos or anything close to that. There should be no Avodah Zarah or no atheism, right? They should be kosher Jews. That's talking about the camp. But you know what is important? He was talking about when they actually go and smite the enemy. When they go and smite the enemy, they have to be, like we saw out here, they have to be ruthless. They have to kill. And not only that, according to the Torah, many verses, when they go to smite the enemy, they are allowed to plunder. They're allowed to pillage. They're allowed to conquer. And not only that, they're allowed to eat non-kosher food. They're allowed to eat. It's explicit in the Torah. Like the Rambam says, yeah, they're not encouraged to eat the non-kosher food they find, but if they're hungry and they don't want to walk back to camp, it's hard to go get the tivol fake schnitzel that they have, and they see that there's actual shawarma where they're going to conquer, God willing, so they could eat that. It's mutter for them to plunder and pillage and conquer and eat detestable things when they go and smite the enemy. He took Ramban wrong. Ramban says when they're in the encampment with God and preparing for war, they shouldn't. And not only that, they're allowed to even rape. Yafas Toar, they are allowed to do that. Or even if the woman's submitting, so they're not raping. Okay, she wants to. Normally that would be Gilur Rayos. And in the camp they can't do that. A Jew can't do that. A Kohen certainly can't do that. But even Yafas Toar is mutter to a Kohen. You have a Kohen soldier who's going to, God willing, conquer. And this is not going to be the majority. I don't know if anybody's done this in the modern era. But you have a Kohen soldier who, for whatever reason, feels the Yetzer Hara at that point. So that's mutter for him. The Torah permitted it. And David HaMelech himself did it. So excuse me, Rav. Okay? You're telling them to be extra special and hold them to a higher standard than any army in the world, that even the Torah itself says Jews do not have to. They have to be kosher while they're encamping. But the second they're set upon their enemies, they can, like I said, they are allowed to do all of these things. They're encouraged to kill. They must kill or they will be killed. And they're doing it for Am Yisrael. And it is perfectly fine if they were to take spoils and to eat, quote unquote, detestable things. The treif becomes mutter and the Gilur Rayos become mutter at that point. That is complete heter. And he also said that Jewish tradition makes it very clear that the unnecessary spilling of blood is contrary to belief that humanity is a reflection of godliness and therefore demands a level of consideration. He's talking about collateral damage. We have no such consideration that we've seen before. When we have to fight, we say that go. You can't suddenly take more mercy and start considering, oh, that enemy combatant, that Amalekite, has now put his women and children in harm's way, so now I can't kill him, or I have to watch out. I have to make sure not, aim around them. That's not my problem, as we said before. The pasuk that talks about God's image, godliness, demands that murderers and sworn enemies of evil be destroyed unequivocally. Shofech ha'adam ba'adam demoy shafech. Jewish tradition requires or forbids bloodshed. Okay, that's how it goes. It's either it's required, an obligation to kill, or it is strictly forbidden. There's no middle ground of, oh, we try not to kill that. There's no such thing in Torah. The reflection of godliness, that means the Tzelem Elokim, according to the pasuk, says those who are deserving of death need to be put to death, either by a court or by a righteous Jewish army acting in God's name, smiting Israel's enemies. Those are the people deserving of death. There's no such thing as, oh, better not that they not die. Okay? There's no middle ground. It's either mutter and obligated. Sorry, that's either required or it's forbidden. There's nothing like there. It's mutter, or you have to watch out. If you can somehow not try to kill them. So what he's writing here is basically his attempt, like many people, to grasp at straws. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance going around. People have been thrust into a situation where they just don't understand what's going on. Right? There are many people, their politics, especially leftism. We could get along with the bad guys. We can employ them in our yeshuvim. So now they learned the lesson about how coexistence. No, they never wanted to exist. They were trying to kill you all along. So their whole world is crashing down. So there are a lot of people. The Torah is very clear what it says. I'll get back to that medrash they said before. Rabbi Weissman was pointing this out. I think you should listen to what he's saying. He says Avraham Avinu himself, according to the medrash on this week's parsha, had some remorse. Perhaps I killed people I should not have had in this whole war. Made a lot of war. Maybe there was some collateral damage. And God told him, don't worry about it. You killed people that needed to be killed. What does this teach us? Well, one, this is an agadic passage. So it's not necessarily a halachic passage. But what does it teach us? That the sages thought, there were some sages said, maybe you should worry about collateral damage. So God said in this case, no, it's okay. That's fine. Maybe someone would say, yeah, but if God hadn't told him it was okay, maybe you should have worried about collateral damage. I don't know. Was Avraham Avinu actually worried? It tells you more about the Bala Medrash than it does about the actual halacha. But there is no halachic statement that you could find, at least to my knowledge. Maybe someone should show this to me. Aside from this idea that Avraham Avinu had some remorse, but Kamash Balan, the point is the Kamash Balan. God said, you fought a good war. It's totally fine. They were the bad guys were meant to die, and even the people who were hanging out with them. We saw that Saul told the Canaanites, stay away, I don't want you to become collateral damage. We saw that the Torah says you warn the enemy that you're going to attack, and those who want to flee can flee. But after that, the halacha doesn't have anything to say about this, and you should not be worried about it either. Okay, so I don't like I said, I don't like what he wrote here. I think there's two things that he got wrong. That which is talking about the purity and the holiness of the Jewish encampment. Okay, yes, they're supposed to be holy and pure and all that, and not give into any taivas while they make a camp. But the second they're set upon the enemy, bloodshed, shvichas damim, gila rayos, right? And not avodah zarah, that doesn't work. And even eating non-kosher and taking their property, those would all be sins. But now we encourage them to do it. We encourage them to kill and take property, and we allow them to eat non-kosher and do gila rayos if that's what they need to do. Right? That's totally fine. He's trying to say they shouldn't even do that when they're fighting. And this whole idea about bloodshed, Jewish law, unnecessary spilling above is contrary to belief that humanity is a reflection of godliness. That's not what Chazal said. Okay, God said that man was created in God's image, and therefore bloodshed is not tolerated. That is, the wicked who committed it are to be punished by having their own blood shed. That's the solution. You have murderous people; they're to be put to death in the way prescribed by the Torah, brought to trial if they're individuals, or destroyed in war if they are a national entity fighting against Israel. We have to understand also, the Rav said this before, a non-Jewish person who raises his hand to harm a Jew is chayav misa. Okay, he attacks a Jew, or even smites a Jew, so he is to be killed. It's chayav misa. A national entity that tries to harm Am Yisrael is also basically they're signing their death warrant. They are to be destroyed. That's what God has asked for. I pray that we begin to understand this.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.